and good afternoon. Peace and grace to all. I pray that you are well today. It is a cold day outside. At about 6:30 this morning, I checked my cellular device to find that we were at a 12 degrees. It told me it was 12 degrees outside, but a feel like 1. It felt as if it were only 1 degree outside. And ladies and gentlemen, that's cold. So for all of us that walk around and self-proclaim that we are good people, this is the kind of weather that you have an opportunity to prove that. We do have a homeless, non-sheltered population that are living in this weather. And so I urge each and every one of us, I encourage us to be that good people that we say we are and extend a hand of compassion and care for our homeless and unsheltered community, especially our mothers with small children. You're listening to Rachelle Wilson here at WHGE 95.3 FM. I am your hostess for today, and I am delighted to be in your company. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for staying tuned in and for listening to my report and my broadcast of what I have been up to all this week. Perhaps much like you, I too have been attending several board meetings that had to be attended. And you know, those can get a little passionate sometimes when you have more than 2 or 3 folks who are passionate about what they believe in. And so they were very interesting, insightful, and informative. Along with that, there's a plethora of emails, text messages, phone conversations, and of course, let us not forget our virtual Zoom meetings, to which I believe I did approximately somewhere between 10 and 12 in just this 1 week alone, engaging folks in conversations about important issues that affect you and me. And so I don't talk about everything that I'm involved in. It's not always relative to let your left hand know proverbially with what your right hand is doing. That's not always necessary. But each week there is something that has touched my heart and my soul. And if it affects me, there could be someone out there that is also impacted by the information. So to my Facebook audience, I would ask that you please share today's video. Today's video, I will be talking about trauma and the trauma-informed and mental health and wellness that should and rightfully, in some cases will, impact those people and accompany that. So, pardon me. This weather has really been on a roller coaster from warm 46, 47 degrees to 1 degree, and the body has to adjust and adapt to all of those weather changes as it changes internally as well as externally. But I want to jump right into it because I am just a few minutes behind schedule, again, because of this weather and all of the involvement of conversations throughout the week. The advocacy that I'm involved in throughout the week keeps me extremely busy and typically keeps my head buried in a laptop or a book. And a very dear friend of mine sent me a fabulous video as we were conversating about those people who are trauma-informed, particularly because I'm so heavily involved in our returning citizens, our re-entry process, people who have done time, incarceration, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and now they are coming out, returning to their families, if they have one, a support system, if they have one, and always to our communities and to society. And so with my heavy involvement in that, I like to stay abreast of the information that's pertinent and relative for today's climate, shall we say. And so a very dear friend sent me a video. It's about an hour and 47 minutes long, but it is jam-packed with knowledge and information on trauma-informed Black men. So I want to talk about the Black family and Black men in particular, and our young Black boys of today who are trauma-informed. But I've always been under the impression, I learned somewhere in my early 30s, that you got to know the root of a thing in order to understand the fruit of a thing, right? So many of us, myself, I'm here, I'm at the radio station, and you're listening, you're tuned in. You already know the numbers and the statistics that massive incarceration has done to the Black man, which of course directly affects the Black family, and that tentacle, it goes out to our young Black sons who are growing up without fathers. And when we think of trauma-informed and mental health concerns, this is usually where we pick up, right there at the incarceration level. And we know that massive incarceration took place under the Nixon leadership, the war on drugs and all of that. It was a campaign to massively incarcerate Black men in order to get them off the streets, population control, and of course economics, because those that are incarcerated have a value on their head, but those that were not, incarcerated, they wanted, Nixon and his campaign certainly wanted to economically make sure that they were not taking jobs and employment opportunities for white families. So we all know that part, but let's roll the film back. Let's reel it back and get to the root of some of these systemic racisms and systemic injustices that have led us to where we are today. And I want to come forward to our little Black and brown boys who are in the streets, and they're hurting each other and themselves, obviously, because one's going to the prison and one's going perhaps to the graveyard. And so the question became, in this conversation, this dialogue that I was having with a good friend, how did we get here? How did we get here? How did we get to the point of a nation of people, a great nation of Black and brown hued people? How did we get to a point where we go from kings and queens and scientists and astrologers and astronomers and great lawyers and people of justice to now families that are destroyed and broken because of mass incarceration? Our young boys, Black and brown, are hurting themselves and each other. How did we get here? I don't want to spend a lot of time on the 2-hour video that my dear friend, actually was Brother John Muhammad, that shared this video with me. And the name of the video, I encourage you to watch it, is called Buck Breaking. Buck, B-U-C-K, Buck Breaking. And this particular video, this 2-hour video, explains to me, to you, how we went from the roots to the fruit. So we know that trauma-informed is, as Governor Carney has so eloquently stated, the entire state of Delaware is in a state of trauma-informed because people are traumatized. People are hurting. And we're hurting for various different reasons. Maybe this family's hurting because of homelessness. And this family over here is hurting because of, divide and conquer purposes. This family is hurting because of incarceration. I know as a mother of a son who's being held captive, currently at Smyrna, I know directly firsthand how traumatizing it can be. Had it not been for my son's scenario taking place in his life, I would not be in a movement, to my knowledge, unless the divine universe would have found another way to put me in this seat and in this position. But primarily, I'm here because it knocked on my door. Massive incarceration knocked on my door, and I became a woman, a mother of a movement, because I turned my trauma into a passion for justice, for righteousness. And I'm sure that you can all do that as well, and many of you do. Pardon me. But I want to go back just a little bit and just touch the tip of the iceberg of this video, this 2-hour movie, if you will, of buck breaking, and bring it forward to the best of my ability, as far as I can understand. The best way to break a buck, according to this video, was obviously to take the number one provider and protector of the family, the black family, which is historically conditioned in our minds. We knew from Africa and as Moors, the black man is the protector and the provider of the family. He is the head. The mother, the woman, the black woman is the body. And trust me, without the body, the head can go nowhere. So man and woman need each other. And in order to continue to procreate our beautiful black and brown children, you must have a black father and a black mother. But taking it back to the very moment that the Portuguese set foot on the West African islands and the Ivory Coast, Coast d'Ivory, the moment that they set foot there, they began to demasculate the black man. And in demasculating the black man, humiliating him, embarrassing him in front of his family, it was a way, a surefire way, to take away any level of power and control of protection and provision that the black man, the father, would have over the family household. One of the forms, and there were many, and we can talk about all of them, but I want to zero in a little bit because this video is so fresh in my mind and on my spirit. One of the ways, the practices that was used to demasculate our black men, the black father of the black family, they used inappropriate, unusual, abnormal sexual behaviors in order to demasculate the black man. This is not me talking about homosexuality or the LBGTQU and all of the other letters that I may have missed. I apologize. This is not me bashing those alphabets. This is about me explaining from my perspective, after watching documented historical facts, that what took place when the Portuguese came into contact with black men and their families, they sexually raped them, sodomized them, to demasculate them in order to strip them of their powers. the power of being the black man, the head of the household. If I rape you violently in front of your wife and your children, and I do this on a regular and consistent basis, I flog you, beat you, rape and sodomize you, force you to commit sexual abnormal acts upon me, the Portuguese, and all of the nationalities that surrounded that. If I do that on a regular basis, what am I doing? I am breaking the buck. I am breaking the black man. Not only physically am I destroying him, now I am destroying his family, his spiritual connection to that which is greater than himself. These are the practices that were used and have been used for hundreds of years. My question to you, ladies and gentlemen, would simply be this: has it ended? Do we continue to perpetuate the demasculation of black men in order to destroy black families and young black and brown boys? As a former high school teacher, I learned so much from all of my students. And one of the things that I learned was tolerance and accepting that people are different for all kinds of reasons, like flowers in a garden. We all bring something beautiful to the table. And that includes my LGBTQ, this community. And again, I don't know all the letters, and the letters continue to seem to add on. At last conversation that I had with my dear sister, Emily Evans, I believe there's about 45 or 50 different genders that we can now use in order to identify human beings. Whether it's self-identify or the rest of us must identify. I'll never forget the moment that I had to add on my email tags, she and her. Because this is the era, this is the climate that we are in, where I have to identify myself, Rachelle Wilson, make some intelligent noise, justice movement, she and her, on my emails. And maybe some of you are doing that. Do you find that that is what you have to do, is identify him, her, him, he, she, her? Like, is that where we are? I think it might be that's where we are. But it was through my young children at the high schools. I'm talking 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18-year-olds in a high school setting. And as much as they are learning English and math and science, they are also teaching myself and perhaps much of the rest of the staff the culture of young people. And then as I move along in this movement, I've had the great fortune and opportunity, and it's only been with one or two people. Honestly, I can say it's only two people, one female and one male, who were of the LGBTQ community that I have actually befriended and that has accepted me and befriends me, because we look beyond our sexual preferences and we see each other as the human beings that we are. And it was that male who is of that alphabet that taught me. Actually, he sat down without judgment, no judgment zone, and taught me how to embrace the human being, regardless of the alphabet or the gender to which they self-identify. I love him for that. And I won't say his name, but if you're out there, my dear, you know I'm speaking to you. I love you. And to that gentleman who taught me that in engaging me in those uncomfortable but intimate conversations, helped me cross a bridge to recognize that I don't have to appreciate the behavior to appreciate the person. And so that's where I am with these letters of the alphabet. I can appreciate the person, love them as my human brother or sister. I do not have to agree or appreciate their personal sexual preferences. I may even see them as biblically, or as the Quran would read, or the Torah, even the Catholic Church to some degree. I may read it as immoral to God. But above all of those things, I must learn to love the human being beyond their sexual preferences. Now, having said that and explained that clearly, allow me to say this. Homosexuality, people who engage in sex outside of one man and one woman, people who engage in any type of sexual behaviors outside of the consensual sex between one man and one woman, I have learned that that started from a European cultural standpoint, which is why the Portuguese were able to bring those ideologies into West Africa and the West Indies, those islands, and to use those sexual preferences and practices to demasculate the black man, the head of the black family. Now let's roll forward, because we can all go and do a research on how it went from that day, which we're talking the early 1400s, if not sooner, when the Portuguese first landed here on these lands, and the Moors were here, and they brought these sexual practices to these America lands, which, at that time we were a Mexican Moor. Do the research, do a quick study on your history. We're not going to take a lot of time and go through all of that. Just feel free to qualify it. Feel free to do the research and see whether or not I'm accurately on point, or have I bumbled this entire story. I feel very confident that I am on point with this story. So now we fast forward. The Portuguese have begun inappropriate and abnormal sexual behaviors with black men of West Africa and here upon these Amexamor American lands. And now it's beginning to spread, because the mindset of the children who are watching their fathers be raped and sodomized and forced against their will to commit some of these sexual acts in order to save families, in order to preserve their own life. They had to do these things. And their children, their little black sons and their daughters, are witnesses to this behavior. And now we fast forward 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations later, watching this behavior, allowing this behavior to become the norm, because in many parts of America and the world, if you so much as say anything that is not pro-homosexuality or LGBTQ alphabet, people will begin to shoot you down and call you a homophobe, that you're homophobic. If you say one word about anything relating to gay or gay people. Gay people have taken it upon themselves to associate the gay rights movement with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the civil rights movement. And I must tell you, in absolute disagreement. No offense to you personally, but I've got to tell you, the gay movement is in no way at all associated or likened to the civil rights movement, because never have I heard of you, the gay population and community, being enslaved and being tortured for 400 years as the Black man and woman and family have been upon these lands here in America. So please, it's insulting for you to associate the gay rights movement with the civil rights movement. Okay? So I just got to get that part off my chest. And whether you like it or not, we're here to speak truth. At WHGE 95.3 FM, every journalist that sits behind this microphone has an obligation and a commitment to you, the listening audience, to tell you the truth. To tell you the truth. And we will not be censored because your feelings is on the table. You can count on WHGE as the only Black-owned, Black-operated, insured news, information, education, and advocacy station in the city of Wilmington and the state of Delaware, thanks to Mr. Harmon Carey and his ingenuity and ambitions. We're the only one. And if another one popped up today, we would still be considered as the first. So we set the precedence for every other Black information news organization that comes forward. You must speak truth, truth to life. We set that precedence here at 95.3 FM. So we don't want to offend your little feelings, baby. We don't want to hurt your feelings. We don't want to be offensive. But if the truth offends you, you might want to take a closer look in that mirror and find out where you are in being able to center in truth. Make some intelligent noise is going to give it to you just as we see it. All right? So now we're fast forward, reel the movie forward. 400 years of little Black boys and brown boys and hued boys learning by watching the examples of this sodomy and homosexuality, these practices, undercover, inadvertently. They've seen it. They've grown up to some level and some degree of thinking it's all right. We will love you and accept you regardless of your sexual preferences. And that part is probably true. You're not going to hate a child because they have a different preference than what is normal, than what divine God Almighty, something greater than ourselves, said to procreate, you must have one man and one woman. Put the two of them together and soon enough, something, a creation, will be brought forward. Anything outside of that, to every book I've ever read, everything I've ever grown up to understand, everything outside of that is abnormal. Abnormal. And now, here we are in 2022. And I go back to my thinking of my high school experience, realizing and recognizing in the conversations and the dialogues that I had with young males who had made this choice to engage in abnormal sexual preferences. I'll never forget the time that I don't want to use the word caught, but there were two black males who were hooking in class because they were with each other in a secluded part of the school, engaging in a sexual scenario with one another. One was 14, one was 16, and they were there in this scenario in a secluded location inside of the school. And as I'm walking the halls, checking for those who are missing from classrooms, I stumble upon this interaction of these two teenage boys. In conversating with them and trying to understand, really open up and trying to understand, without repeating the entire conversation, because some of it is maybe not appropriate for radio. I am censoring my language, but hopefully you can follow me in your own visionaries. In me taking these two young men to the principal's office, the dean of students to his office for cutting class. I couldn't take them for their sexual behaviors on school property. I could only report and leave that up to the administration. But in the walk that it took from where I located them to the dean's office, I was able to engage them in a conversation briefly about their sexual behavior. And why are you here with each other when there are so many beautiful girls in the school who would probably love to be a part of your company, to engage you in a friendship? And I'll always remember the answer that the 14-year-old boy gave me. I was shocked, but as a professional, there's nothing I could do. I have to be sensitive and try to understand. And so you just love them. You just love them to their greatness, no matter how shocking to the conscience their answer and their culture may be. But this 14-year-old boy answers me when I ask him, why are you out here with him when you can be with so many of her? He tells me, I'm exploring my sexuality. I'm exploring who I am and who I want to be. My uncle is gay and he's all right. He has a support system. I've never met a gay poor person. Like, gay people have money. I don't know. But he's answering this question and filling me in on the details in a short walk from where I found them to the dean's office. But it was in that short amount of time and his profound answer to my question that helped me to comprehend a little bit more sensitively on the demasculation of our black men, black sons, and the black man in the family. So now we have 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old boys, young men. We know that you're not fully mentally and cognitively, rationally developed in your mind until you've hit 25. That's when a man really becomes a man, or has that opportunity to be a man, should he so choose to be that. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've learned so much from these young black boys and brown boys who are walking around dressed in dresses and high heels, or tight jeans and high heels, and the cutoff shirt showing their belly buttons, and they're popping it with the girls walking down the street. you know, and they're cool and they're laughing and they're exploring their sexuality. They are learning, who am I and who do I want to become? But now I'll take it all the way back to the psychology. And if we as adults are truly focused on the psychology of what is happening in the demasculation, we have to take it all the way back to the practices that the Portuguese, and even further than them, we can look at our Greek and Roman history and find quite a bit of homosexuality practices. There was a time when Roman and Greek white men only procreated with white women for the purpose of procreating children. It was a necessary evil for them. Their actual pleasure was in homosexuality, man with man. In the Roman and the Greek, the days of Romans and Greek rulership, this was their pleasure. And to have babies with a woman was simply a duty. And so we fast forward that to the Portuguese in West Africa and the West Indies. We fast forward that to slavery here in America, where sodomy is used as a form of punishment. They would flog our black men. The biggest, the brightest, the strongest, the most outspoken black bucks were the ones that were the most flogged and the most sexually abused, raped, and sodomized on the plantation. And always it was done in public. They would do this in public in front of all of the families to humiliate this man. You took his manhood means you took his power. You depowered him by demasculating him. And we bring that forward to 2022, and we talk about trauma-informed. And the black boys, brown boys, that are hurting and killing themselves and others. They have been traumatized for generations. Generations of learning a behavior that is abnormal, but psychologically is being taught to them through mainstream media. Please don't believe everything you see on television. Please, ladies and gentlemen, be smarter, more intelligent than that. But our children are being brainwashed for 500s of years into thinking that the abnormal is acceptable to normal. They're traumatized. We have traumatized our black and brown children. We demasculated their fathers and grandfathers and their ancestors for hundreds and generations. Then we massively incarcerate them, over-sentence black men to imprisonment with other black men and other nationalities, and homosexuality in the prisons. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a firm believer, as I stated at the beginning of my broadcast. I learned in my early 30s, you gotta know the root of a thing in order to understand the fruit of a thing. So if we have roots and history, 400 or more years of history of sodomy and homosexuality and demasculation of the black man, the leader of the family, the black family, What can we expect from our little black boys, our little brown boys, our little hued sons? We have trained them on purpose, but inadvertently through social media, mainstream television, media, and broadcasting, that it's okay. It's all right to dress up our little boys like little girls. It's okay to teach our little 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds in preschool and first grade about genitalia, man and woman's genitalia, and homosexuality, and put it under the auspices, under the umbrella of teaching them inclusion. We say we are teaching them to include all people and accept all people for who they are. Our black churches have always been the pillar of strength to the black family and the black community. And too often we see many of our black leaders in our black churches embracing our homosexual community. Not only embracing them, but standing up in solidarity. Is there an economic reward for that? Let's not go into that conversation. How do our black churches prosper from supporting our LGBTQ alphabet community? So many of our black leaders in black churches have stepped away from what their Bible has guided them to believe, because it's under the auspices of inclusion, and God loves all of us, and so therefore we must all love one another. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm simply listening to the messages. I go online to some of the virtual congregational sermons and meetings of our black churches, and I listen to what the leaders are standing on the podiums and what they are saying. I look at our black senators and House representatives right here in Delaware who support inclusion, LGBTQ alphabet communities. And again, if you are just joining me and you did not hear me say, let me reiterate this one small point for you. I learned from a member of the LGBTQ community, from them, the intimate and uncomfortable but honest and transparent conversations that person, those people taught me. They taught me how to love the person even if you don't love their behaviors. Just like I can love the alcoholic, but I don't have to love the fact that they're an alcoholic and they drink. They're destroying their livers. I have to love my LGBTQ community, and I do, as my human brother and sister. I do not appreciate all of their sexual choices, especially when it comes down to trafficking young black girls, young black boys, and harvesting their internal organs, particularly the uterus, for scientific evaluation and experiments. I'm against that. And maybe that's just me being an old fogey. I'm an old fogey. And maybe that's okay. And maybe it's not. And maybe you hate me for that. And maybe you don't. But I'm keeping it real 100% with you. If we want to have any level of saving our young black boys so that they can procreate with little black girls, so that we can continue our population, I ask you, I encourage you to sit down, talk with love and no judgment. Talk to our little 14 and 15 and 13 and 12 and nowadays 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, because they're learning it in school under the umbrella of inclusion. Inclusion is teaching our 3 and 4 and 5-year-old babies about gender and sex, between a man and a woman, and 2 men and 2 women, and men who wear dresses and high heels and all of these kinds of things. The transgender, you was once a man, you did surgery, and now you consider yourself as a woman. And by law, you force me to say that you are a woman when you and I both know that you were born, physically born as a man. Where I come from, the old school, the preachers and the teachers and the leaders of the black church, where I come from 20 years ago, they would have said that is a spiritual issue, that a demon, you messing around with demons, you're confused. So have the uncomfortable, intimate and honest and transparent conversations. Since they're learning it in school and getting to learn who they are in school, make sure you're having these conversations with our little black and brown boys at home, where they can get the truth of the matter. No judgment, but give them an option to see and to know that it's all right to procreate with little black and brown girls. You're listening to Rachelle Wilson. Make some intelligent noise, justice movement. Today, advocating for little black and brown and hued boys because of centuries and generational curses of demasculation of the black man and the black family. They've been traumatized, trauma-informed, and they need our help. So let's do that. I thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I can't thank you enough for focusing in, and I pray that you understood the message, that you will be kind enough, for those of you on my Facebook, YouTube, and listening to me on Spotify, Apple, and Anchor. First, I would ask that you please subscribe. And second, I would ask that you please share. Share this knowledge and this information. You might think it's bullshit, but to someone else, it may be exactly what they needed to hear today. So share the news and the information. And remember, you heard it first right here with Rachelle Wilson. Make some intelligent noise at WHGE 95.3, the one and only Black Advocacy, Education, and Information News Network, for our people and by our people. For you. Remember, God loves you, and so too do I. Until we meet next week, God bless you, and God love you. Peace and grace.